Hello everybody, my name is Brooke Birnbaum and today I'm going to be going over how to make muffins. The recipe that I'm going to be doing is with chocolate chips. However, you could easily add blueberries or whatever else you wanted. If you wanted a crumble topping, you could do that. Totally up to you. You can personalize them. I'm just going to use dark chocolate, but I will explain where and when you could add in those other pieces. So here we go. I'm going to start by going through the ingredients, and then as soon as I'm done telling you what all you're going to need, we're going to start in with the directions. You could technically do this in a day if you have enough time. However, with students at school, I have them split it into 2 days because of the shortened class periods. On to the ingredients. You are going to need 1.5 cups of flour, half a cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 egg, half a cup of milk, 1/4 cup of vegetable oil, and then you need whatever ingredients you want to use inside of your muffins. I'm going to be adding in dark chocolate chips. Alright, so you're going to need a large mixing bowl. This is large enough if you can be careful. If you generally aren't super careful when you mix, then I would get a larger one out. And we're going to start combining ingredients into it. So we need 1.5 cups of flour. I keep my flour in a container like this with a lid. It's important to remember to level the ingredients. Then we're going to need half a cup of sugar. Make sure you're washing your measuring spoons in between. You can then work it out different ones. We need 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I have a small level here. And then we need half a teaspoon of salt. I just put it in here to make it easier to see. Once you have all of those things in here, you're going to mix them all together. I like to just do a quick mix with fork. We're going to set this aside, and then in a smaller bowl, we're going to get an egg. So I'm going to crack my egg into this bowl. As soon as you're done cracking an egg, you are going to throw the shells away and wash your hands. I'm going to grab a different fork and whisk this. Good enough. Now to this, we're going to add the 1/2 cup of milk and 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. So you're going to make sure it's a large enough bowl to hold both of those things and to mix it together a little bit once you have them all in there. So we'll start with our 1/2 cup of milk. I suggest measuring over the bowl, just in case you make a mistake. 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. You're going to make sure it's all the way filled up. Then, like I said, we're going to mix this a little bit. If I were making this with somebody, I would have had someone doing this while I was doing this at the very beginning. Just that way they were both done at the same time. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this bowl from the beginning and we're going to make a hole in the center of it, or a well. Easier to do if you have a spoon. I have a fork, but I'm going to grab a spoon. The ingredients here are now being added to the center of the ingredients here. And you're going to mix it, but only until it's just moistened. So lumps are okay. We're just going to add this to the center. Then I'm going to go back to my fork, and we're going to mix. You could definitely use a whisk for this if you wanted to, but forks are easier to clean. Hopefully you can tell. It is definitely still lumpy, but there isn't a bunch of flour stuck to the sides and not mixed in. Now would be a great time to add whatever ingredients you want to. So in my case, I'm going to add chocolate chips. Add 1/2 cup. I would probably suggest you use smaller chocolate chips just so that they can spread out a little bit better, but this is what I've got, so it's what I'm using. And then we're just going to briefly mix these in. Perfect. If this is made in a classroom, I would suggest stopping here for the day and putting saran wrap over it and then setting this in the fridge without the fork. Because that's what I have my students do during class, I'm going to show that now, and then it's going to show you 24 hours from now what that's going to look like. If you wanted to do it all at once, then just continue watching and skip the 24 hours in the fridge. I am going to put this in the fridge without the fork, and I will see you in 24 hours. Alright, it has been 24 hours, so this is similar to what it's going to be like if you do this in 2 days. I now have my muffin mix, which is ready to go, and I have a cupcake tin for me to put them in. I am going to start by preheating my oven to 400 degrees, that way it's ready to go as soon as these are in here. Today, super simple. What you're going to do is you are going to take cupcake liners. unless you want to spray this with a non-stick spray, or if you have one that's kind of silicone where you don't have to line it with something, then that's fine. But if not, you're going to need to have cupcake liners. And I'm going to use Christmas ones because that's my favorite time of year. It's so much fun. Super cute. Some snowflakes. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. We're going to start with that. We can add more in. So a lot of people use like a small ice cream scoop just because it makes it easy for it to get out of it. I personally use a spoon just because I think it's easier to clean. In fact, it is easier to clean. So you're going to want to fill these up about 2/3 of the way full. You're going to try not to get it stuck on the side of the paper just because it makes it close in around it. So you really want it to look like that. I kind of messed up on the first one. Since I have chocolate chips in mine, I am making sure that as I'm scooping, I have chocolate chips in each scoop that I'm adding. Otherwise, you're going to have some muffins that don't have much chocolate. The other thing that's nice about having this in the fridge for those 24 hours is it makes it less runny. And so when you're putting it in here, it makes it much easier to not make a mess on the pan. As with any other thing you're putting in the oven, the most important part is to make sure that whatever size you make these, they're all the same or very close to the same. Because what happens if one is really big and the rest are really small is the really small ones will cook, the really big one will not, or the really small ones will burn and the big one will cook. And so just try to avoid all of that. This one's super cute. Has a truck, says Seasons Greetings. Okay, so I still have a little bit of batter left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to even these out. So some of them have a little bit less than others, and so I'm just going to add a little bit at a time to the ones that don't have as much. I grabbed a spatula. I'm going to use this just to get all of the batter out. I'm really, really big on not wasting anything. Alright, fantastic. I'm going to go get this into water. So these are done. It makes 12, and these are going in the oven for 12 to 15 minutes. I'd always start with the smallest amount of time. So after 12 minutes, take them out, look at them, check them with a toothpick. You want to make sure that the toothpick comes out clean. And then if they're not done at that 12 minutes, all good, put them back in. However, if they are done, then you haven't burnt them. Whereas if you put it in for 15 minutes right away, and you only check it after 15 minutes, if they're burnt, damage is already done, there's nothing else you can do. So I'm going to put this in the oven for 12 minutes, and we'll check back in when they're done. Okay, so after 12 minutes, this is what they look like. I decided to use my Christmas oven mitt because I have Christmas cupcake liners. And what you do now is you take a toothpick to test them. Now, please keep in mind, I set this right on my counter because my counter is heat proof. Yours might not be, so please be careful about taking this out. I chose one, a medium-sized one, not the largest, not the smallest. And perhaps you can tell, perhaps you can't, I don't know, but there's a good amount on here. Not just the chocolate, because the chocolate's going to be there regardless because it's melted or melting. So this is not done, so I am going to go ahead and put it back in because I can tell that these are not ready yet. I'm going to leave it in for 3 more minutes. So I have a clean toothpick, and I'm going to look for one of the largest ones. So that would be like this. Stick it all the way down, pull it out. This looks perfect. These are now done. You can tell that they're golden brown color. These got a little bit darker because of where they were in the oven. My oven doesn't always heat exactly the same in the same areas. But they look fantastic, and I look forward to enjoying them.